Hello, everybody. You are once again listening to Shield Hero Weekly, the show that comes out usually a couple days after the episode of Shield Hero, just long enough for us to be asked 1,000 times where the new episode is.
That's true. The calls have begun every time, many of them. I got it, guys. You no longer need to tell me to do the episode. I know to do the episode and when it comes out. So I'm just letting you know. You don't have to at me anymore.
The episodes air on Wednesdays.
Yep.
And we just don't always have time on Wednesday to get it done right away. But, I would just advise, don't assume the show is canceled if it hasn't been an entire week since the last one.
That's a fair assumption. Yeah. Don't jump to conclusions.
So anyway, episode 6 we watched today.
A new party member.
How do you feel about this one?
Well, okay, so I can see possibly some people being worried because, again, this is an extremely lighthearted episode where there's a touch of edginess here and there that I find delightful. But we'll get into that. But it is absolutely like kind of a happy-go-lucky misadventures, just having a good time adventuring. Nothing that serious happens. And I don't know, we're just kind of like meeting our new characters and having a great time. So no false rape accusations, no, slave. There's actually a little bit, again, of like some like slave darkness that creeps in towards the end of the episode.
Really weirdly, there's a moment towards the start where they kind of brush over the fact that he he put a slave seal on Philo, and she seemingly was not okay with that.
I mean,
but
yeah,
it doesn't seem to have mattered much.
That is,
I don't know what was going on there.
So just to be clear, so whatever, his bird, I'm gonna call her Firo, just because I think that sounds the best. So I'm calling her Firo.
Yeah.
Call her whatever you like. And so Firo, the end of last episode, turns into a little girl. So it's confirmed. We talked to the slave guy who sold him the egg. If you once in a while there will be an epic high-level filiolol or firiolol, whatever, that is so good, it's like the leader of the pack, you know him well, and it's a king/queen, and they have the ability to transform into a human shape. So that's why she's like angelic and all that. So, okay, cool. So we've got like a super-powered filiolol. Filioliol. Okay, I think I'm saying that right.
It's filolial.
Okay, great. So great. So we've got like the cream of the crop here. It's a total badass. It kicks some serious ass, which explains why it's really strong and fast and all that stuff. So that's cool. But that scene of putting okay, when he got Raphtalia, like that was done out of desperation. There was no other options. He had to get a slave or whatever so that he could make progress in this world to do his one duty of fighting the waves and whatnot. I feel almost like we're supposed to just not ask that many questions about him, like putting another like master slave seal on, like, of course, like he's the shield hero. This is what he does. He enslaves.
Yeah,
so he's just gonna like get another one.
Slaves.
But
it's
this
weird.
Is like a weird child, and it's very strange to not focus on that at all.
I feel like the show almost expects you to go and read the source material or something, because. And we've had, so throughout this podcast, we've had times where we were having difficulty understanding what was going on because of the fact of the way things differ from the source materials, or there's more detail. And like on the last podcast, I was calling out everybody for this thing that I was saying that like that he was like under a curse that was causing his perception to be different of Raphtalia.
Yep.
I made a whole second video about that on my own channel, on the After Dark channel, and like the discussion raged for days. But the most interesting thing about it is that depending on which materials people had read, everyone seemed to have a different perspective.
That's
because
true.
It seemed that people who had read the web novel, because there's not just a light novel, it's originally a web novel that was then a light novel. So, and there's a lot of changes between even those. So people who had read the web novel were telling me that like it's way more explicitly, yes, they are cursed like from the start. Like when they came to this world, they were cursed. That's what they were telling me. Meanwhile, people who have read the light novel are debating over it, because some of them are saying that there's evidence to support the idea, and others are saying that that evidence is flimsy, or that the order of events being different means that it means something different. Then there are people who have read the manga who have their own stance, and then of course the anime, where a lot of the stuff is just not even apparent at all. And so I have to wonder, like, with the anime, it doesn't feel as though we're necessarily getting a different version of the story, just a truncated version that you need the source material to fully understand. And like with this scene with her, because some people were telling me that in the source material, when he has the slave seal put back on Raphtalia, it was not just her who wanted that. He pressured her into doing it. Mm-hmm. That he was like, I still don't trust you completely. And she was like, well, if it'll make you more comfortable, you know, like, we'll do this thing. So I have a suspicion that maybe that is still true. Like, that characterization of him is still true in this adaptation, because obviously for him to put a slave seal on this creature means he doesn't completely trust it, or, you know, he wants to have more control. So, like, it seems like that darker aspect of his character is still there. Well, it's just not being explicitly explained.
I suppose. I mean, that's the sort of thing I would just call like a bad, like, way to depict the character. Like, they're not accurately they're making mistakes. But like later on in the episode, when we see them going through like the cave and like the dangerous situation or whatever, and they trigger this trap that makes you hear the last thing in the world you want to hear, how convenient. And he hears Raphtalia like whispering to him in his mind, like, I only became your slave again. Like, I didn't want to. I did it to trick you so I could stab you in the back when you least expected it. So obviously, I mean, what that's telling us is that, like, in his deepest, darkest thoughts, he still kind of like thinks it's fucked up that he like has a slave and expects her on some level to like be resentful or not comfortable with it. So, but all this is doing for us in this interpretation is just saying that, like, no, he really is a good guy who like doesn't think that slavery is good and like is expecting her to, you know, not be comfortable with his arrangement. And when she got the slave seal back, he did not insist upon that. That was entirely her idea that he begrudgingly did. I mean, you know, he could have fought harder or said no. He did not. Right. So I guess that informs his character as well. But I don't know. I really think they're going out of their way to make him as palatable a character as possible, to both the detriment and success of the show, I guess.
Yeah, it's muddling the point, really. It's making it less clear what kind of story this is, because, like, while I understand the desire to tone things down a little bit to make it more accessible, at that point it starts to affect the logic of the events, where you don't understand why he's acting this way anymore when you don't have that same depth of emotional understanding of him. You know, whether it paints him in a worse light, it's still a more interesting character, you know.
That's true. And I don't know. I'm gonna, while we talk, I'm gonna go and look up like what happened when he got Firo. Okay, I'm looking at the manga right now. Whatever. We can go on to other stuff, but I'm gonna see what was going on when he got the seal. At least
while you're looking at that, I'll talk about how that scene with the with him hearing the last thing he'd want to hear. Mm-hmm. That scene is emblematic of how I felt about this episode, which is that the presentation is really starting to let me down with this show. Because in the interim between us doing the previous episode, I watched 13 episodes of That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime.
Oh, okay. Been meaning to watch that.
These are both they're both shows that I had long predicted would get highly successful anime adaptations. Like, they were hugely popular source material. Isekai was all the rage. You know, so like years back when I first encountered these, I was like, oh, these are going to be huge one day, you know, when they get anime. Mm-hmm. And clearly the studios who made them both felt the same way, because they made 26 episode out the gate adaptations, which never happens anymore. Like, you only get a 26 episode adaptation if you think it's a sure thing. And so in both of these cases, they clearly approached it like, this is going to be a big money-making thing. Mm-hmm. But That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, in spite of the fact that reading the original, well, you know, I haven't read the light novel, but reading the manga, it was more generic than Shield Hero. It's more of like what you would expect from Isekai. Super overpowered protagonist, just kind of like rebuilding the world and making everybody friends. Mm-hmm. And so when I read that, I was less interested in the anime. However, the anime has really great visual presentation. Like, the first episode is astonishing how creative it is, how unique it is with its visuals. And, like, it doesn't hold up to that same level the whole way through, but there's tons of great cinematography, great background art, which is a shock, you know, in this day and age.
Right, of course.
So while it's not exactly like The first episode is actually mind-blowing, but like beyond that point, I wouldn't call it a mind-blowing show. But when I look at Shield Hero, it's like they put in the bare minimum to make it like not something you would complain about, you know?
Sure.
It's just barely good enough that someone like me who will drop a show if the visuals are too ass, you know, won't drop it, but will be like, this doesn't impress me in any way. And like with that particular scene, it felt like they could have done something really creative with it. Like, it's kind of a weird mindfuck scene. There's like, you could have taken so many creative directions with that, and instead it's just like images of a couple characters' faces, and the scene lasts.
They just stand there and like say the words. Yeah.
And so it was just like, man, that scene could have, in spite of the fact that, yeah, this scene doesn't necessarily matter all that much because it's just one little quick thing on the way that happens, but it felt almost completely pointless because it's just over as soon as it starts. It's like an idea that sounds cool, but it's not cool in its presentation. And so, you know, this is the kind of scene that is made or broken on how well you portray it. If it had been trippy and cool, it would have been a super memorable moment, and instead it's just a random footnote in this adventure. So I was really let down by that, and it made me like, it just made me feel like, man, you probably would be better served by reading one of the source materials for this than by watching the anime, in spite of it having pretty good music, you know, and decent designs and color art. Like, not to say that I would say, you know, the show's not worth watching at all, but I would say it's not, you shouldn't have it be your only exposure to the story at this point.
Well, that's certainly fair. And I mean, I absolutely stand by in every sense that the manga has been a generally superior, I mean, it's everything I said in my video about why manga over, like, I appreciate it more. This is the perfect example of, like, yes, this show has music, it has some voice acting, that's cool, things are moving, but the keyframes are, the art is just superior in the manga. I think, like, the emotions that are evoked from, like, facial expressions and, like, having better art allows you to do better expressiveness with characters. More, I don't know, more stuff is done. Like I've said, the depiction of our main character is way more milquetoast and uninteresting visually in the anime versus the manga. So, yeah, this was a very strong episode for that case. Honestly, Fira was a big fat bird. Honestly, looks pretty terrible in the anime, and I loved the way that she looked consistently in the manga. Like, fluffy as hell, adorable, and seeing her, like, CG pulling the wagon. Again, like, it's fine. It adapts the source material. It makes it move on screen. I'm sure people who don't know what they're missing or have zero taste would find that perfectly fine. But just knowing, you know, what you can get elsewhere.
What bothered me the most about it, and this is something that I'll probably make a separate video about, is just that when you compare it to Slime, both of them were obviously a sure thing. So they both have equal opportunity to succeed. And so if you have a show that you know is going to be a cash cow, you basically can either take the mentality of, let's do the minimum amount of effort so that we make the maximum profit. Like, if as long as it's good enough, then we'll rake in all the money, because nobody's going to outright complain about it. It's not so bad that, like, mainstream audiences would be repulsed by the visual presentation, but it's not going to impress, like, in a long-term sense. It's not going to have critics talking about it for years to come or anything like that. Whereas Slime felt like it was intending to elevate the material to that level, where they said, hey, because we know this is going to be a big hit, let's put more effort into it so that it can be an even bigger hit, and critics will be even more impressed, and people will talk about it and have even more incentive to share it. So I just feel like it's long-term better to take that approach. And sure, there's some level on which if you spend too much time and money on a project, then no matter how big it gets, it will still fail if you go overboard. But it just seems like there's no way that this material didn't deserve to have more put into it, especially from a studio who just brought us Made in Abyss, which Indeed. For at least some of it had some of the most impressive presentation that you've seen in anime this decade, you know?
Yeah, you're not wrong. I guess all I'd say in defense, or rather to expand on that, is just the high points for me in this episode were, one, I liked the fight scene at the end had some cool moments that I liked.
It did.
And like, for example, we see earlier on in the episode that Raphtalia, when they're attacked by bandits, she uses her like invisibility spell. So like we've established that's a thing that she can do now. At the end, we just see her literally go, teleports behind you invisibility mode. And I think that was cool. And I like seeing her. And then after that, there's a moment where, we realize the thing can hear things by sound. It doesn't need to see them visually, so her invisibility isn't working. And there's a cool moment where she like dodges an attack. And in particular, the highlight of that whole fight scene for me was when after they figure out like how to hit it, they've got it off guard or whatever, when Firo does her flying Inazuma kick, and we see the entire thing's skull shatter into pieces under its head and blood splurt out. I mean, that was like the best visual moment in the whole episode for me.
I would say my ranking of like whether a fight scene, regardless of how great it was it satisfying, comes down to whether or not I uncontrollably utter the phrase "get fucked."
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened.
That guy got so fucked. It was fucking out of control.
Like, it was... I appreciated the bat shield thing. That was fun. And its cool. Ears exploding out was cool. It getting stabbed. And I'm always a fan of huge blood spray. Like, I want it to be as satisfying as possible if I'm going to watch something die. But, like, the inner shot of its whole skull cracking, like, all the way down. I was, get fucked. And that was the salvaging point of the episode, for sure.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, other than that.
That, and, of course, the other thing that is great, just, and this is... nothing to do with it, the anime adaptation, but it is a cool moment in the story that he robs a bunch of robbers.
Yes, indeed. His mindset is on full display here in terms of treating human lives like a commodity, which is, it's a bit edgy, it's a bit over the top, and again, I know I say this every time, but like he's such like a nice guy in the anime, and he just doesn't seem like the bandits would like believe that he would kill them. That like it's hard for me. I know he has that terrible reputation.
Well, they don't
but
know
as
who
a viewer,
he is.
That's
like they've
true.
never met him before,
and he has an awful reputation as like a rapist and all that stuff. So that's fair. But just for me as the viewer, it's just like I roll my eyes more. Whereas in the manga, he is way more of an asshole and just looks unpleasant on the eyes. So I'm just saying again, there's more consistency there that's good, and the fact that they're not leaning into that doesn't play to the strengths of the narrative. But that's okay. Yeah, go on.
I definitely I love the idea of this because it's what I feel like he's completely justified. I mean, these guys are, as he puts it, like, you guys have probably murdered some people before.
They not only explicitly say they're going to rape them, they explicitly say, we are going to have fun with your girl, aka we're going to rape your girl. We're going to do that. So all bets are off.
He basically could have done whatever he wanted to them, and we as viewers would be pretty fine with it. Like, if he kills all of them or does whatever, like, I wouldn't have complained because it's like these guys are murdering rapists. Like, why even? If anything, it might have been more moral to kill them than to let them go.
Well, maybe, and I mean, I don't know. We didn't see them do anything specifically, and killing someone in cold blood, I guess, is a little. But whatever, they were bandits. I mean, they can get fucked. I don't know. But I did want to just like in general on the idea of like his mindset. That was good. I like seeing him being like, showing his edgy side a little bit, doing that stuff. And I just want to say that with that and that like flash forward to like, or not the flash forward, but like when they're in the cave and everyone has their experience of like hearing the worst thing they want to hear. We see that that Firo's fear is that like Master, this guy, whatever, like he won't want her anymore. She's worried about that. And just before she has that, she like, she said something to him, and he's like, as long as you're useful to me, I won't leave you behind.
Oh, he says, I have money riding on you.
That's right. I have money riding. He says at the very beginning. Yeah. And I just want to say, I way resonate. It was better in the manga, but nonetheless, I still am way into Naofumi's entire approach to life, which is quantify everything. Go full anarcho-capitalist, full anarcho, and like I was thinking about this as I was watching this. I heard Tim Pool, this YouTube guy, political guy, say like if someone offers you a job for a day and says, hey, do you want to work the counter at McDonald's for the day? Like, your instinct's just going to be say, no, of course not. But the correct response is to say, for how much? Like, is it $1 billion? Well, okay, I'll work it for the day. And furthermore, like, to get to what he's talking about, like, when people come up to you, or when people in your life say, like, oh, you'll love me forever, right? Like, you'll never leave me. You'll always be my master. You'll always take care of me. The correct answer is not, yes, of course. The correct answer is, as long as you pull your weight, of course I'll love you forever. As long as you don't drag me down in some horrible, selfish way. That's
whatever we have
answer.
Agreed upon, you know.
Yeah.
If like, because obviously if you just promise yes and then they completely change and do all the things you don't want them to do, then the answer should no longer be yes.
Which leads into my life motto: unconditional love is immoral. Believe it, everybody. Take it to heart. It's not right. You need people to earn your affections and your respect and your care. Nobody deserves it for no reason. And Naofumi was just reinforcing that to me today, and I absolutely love it. I unironically agree with his lifestyle and would do the same. And of course, let's not point out, this show is so pro, like, libertarian. When we see him, like, it's basically anarcho-capitalism. When we see him, like, he's on the road and he encounters that one dude who's just, like, trying to get to the town over, carrying this medicine that he just spent all his money on. Naofumi doesn't just say, oh, I'll just take you there, because he's a busy man with a lot to fucking do. It would be a waste for him to just throw away his incredibly valuable time to go out of his way to help this guy. So he does something mutually beneficial. He makes a deal with him. Okay, I'll carry you. I will go out of my way. I'll leave my wagon here, take just my powerful, speedy bird. We'll get there super quick, and for like 1 silver, I'll do you the service, and we'll get you there. And your medicine will be there to save your dying mother or whatever. And the show, not like, even that was already a great agreement that the guy didn't have money, he'd pay him in goods when he got there. It was, in addition, you can see that Naofumi is a good guy, because as the guy walks out of the room, Naofumi's like, okay, I'll give him the medicine, like, just let me do this, you go get some water. And as he's giving her the medicine, he goes out of his way, he goes above and beyond, and turns that medicine into, like, because he's got these support skills or whatever, his power evolves this into, like, a higher level medicine that he feeds to the dying mom. So he's just done the particular service for this guy of helping him out, just because even though he knows his time is valuable, he's already here. He might as well help this guy out. So even while valuing your own time and being, like altruistically selfish, or, having reasonable demands that people compensate you in whatever way for your time and effort, he's still, as long as it's in his power, he's happy to do favors for people like this.
Good customer service.
Exactly.
Is what that is.
Exactly right.
It's like when you have somebody who's a good trade partner, you want to protect that relationship and keep yourselves on as amicable terms as possible. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this, I don't know exactly what constitutes anarcho-capitalism, but
it's a bit of
to me it just seems like common sense to,
Well, sure. Well, because, like, there's going to be some people out there who, for various reasons, would think, like, wow, what a jerk. He asked for money. And that, I mean, even the show itself is kind of, like, pointing out, like, how unusual it is. His own party members are like,
value yourself and your time. If you are someone who, like, he obviously has bigger fish to fry. He is a great hero. Like, you always have to be weighing. It's like, hey, yeah, I could help. I guess this is like a Superman dilemma in a way, right? Like, Superman is always going to go fight the biggest problem because he can. If he stops to help every cat stuck up in a tree, he doesn't have time to go stop a bigger problem. I'm sure that if there were no bigger problem, he would go and, solve smaller problems. But it's like, if you have the power to stop the biggest problem, your time is just worth more.
You've got to prioritize.
You can't afford it.
Yeah, like, they have literally, like, 1 month, the clock is ticking towards the next wave coming. So every second that he isn't, like, leveling up and grinding up to use his unique special skills to help save everyone's life in, like, the entire fucking world, like, the whole world could pay a cost for that if he just spent every day, let's just say helping the poor. There's nothing wrong, and it's good to help the poor, but you have to, he has to do the thing that will have the biggest benefit in a utilitarian sense. So, yeah, it makes sense. And, like, his actions, we see, like, the seed starting to spread in this episode. Like, acting this way, like valuing his time and still helping people, we see that like the legend of him has start to spread as, what do they call him? Like the legend of the foul leader. Oh, our savior of the heavenly foul is like the nickname that like people are starting to give him about this merchant who runs around with like his big like queen filial or whatever, like helping people and making the world a better place. But he's not going to do it for fucking free because he can't. He needs to get a return on it. And I just think that's dope. I just think that's really fucking dope. And the
it
way
benefits
that he's
all these people to give him that return on investment. Like, if you have something to offer to him in return, do it, because it's going to make him stronger, so he can help you more in the long run.
It's just, this is exactly how, like, whenever I work with people for, like, commission work on videos or whatever, I go out of my way to make sure those people are, like, super, like, I always, you know, I pay them, and I expect good work, and I can be pretty nitpicky, but I make sure people always feel happy, like, with the amount of payment that they get, that they don't feel like their work's being, you know, whatever, used in some uncomfortable way. They know what they're signing up for ahead of time, and it's just, I just think it's really good to do. So it's just nice to see a show that's on my side.
What should I call this episode? Weird utilitarianism?
I mean, basically, I don't know, capitalism hoe or something. I mean, that's
I already
pretty much
have a
the
plan
show.
for a video called Capitalism Ho coming up.
Oh,
so
yeah?
I have to,
Okay.
to save that one.
Let me see. What you know what? I just wanted to say that in general with this episode, this had again, people who like came here for the edginess, I would understand them being disappointed. Me, I know what I'm getting into with the show for the most part because I've read the manga. But like the arc of this episode, where it starts with sorry. You know what? Before I get into that, let me just say I looked up in the manga, like how Firo gets the crest. And it's actually, there's no scene in the manga of her getting the crest. What we see is that just like we cut to a little bit later when she has the crest, and our boy Naofumi just says like, of course I gave her the crest. Like she kept turning into the big bird like while we were trying to sleep at night, and I have to be able to control her. So it's handled differently in the manga in a way that, one, because he's a more edgy guy, like across the board, it kind of makes more sense that this would just be assumed to be done. And also he kind of gives a better reason for it. It's because she is kind of a wild animal he needs to be able to control, where she's really not quite depicted that way in the anime, at least so far.
And it's not that we can't fill in the blanks on that in the show. And I know, because I know how the comments tend to be. People tend to fill in the blanks in a show and then to act as though their interpretation is obvious because you want to pick something that makes sense. And I don't always trust that the idea that makes sense is the one that they had in mind when they did something, you know?
Sure.
So like when I see a scene like that, sure, I could just make the assumption that he did it because she is difficult to control. And that thought crossed my mind, but the show didn't say it. And it doesn't say anything. It just kind of leaves it in the air.
It could be totally different than like the depiction in the manga. Maybe he's just a straight up psychopath and, you know, whatever, wants to enslave all women. I don't know. It could be anything.
And it's just like, I would, you know, if you can give a reason and therefore make it make more sense, that's a better show.
Yeah. I don't know. The manga definitely handled this better, as it does quite a few little points like this. But to the only major other point I wanted to say, as I started before, was that I found this episode to have a super duper satisfying arc of like an RPG, like one quest line of, we get Firo, problem, she keeps turning big and exploding all her clothes. Solution, we need to get magic transforming clothes. The preceding events of the episode are just like the best fetch quests in like a Dragon Quest or like a Final Fantasy, like in Final Fantasy 1 or whatever, that like lead them on this big meandering quest to acquire like the magic thread. Oh, to get the magic thread, you need the magic crystal. To get the magic crystal, you have to go and like find it in this mine in this place. And along the way, they like level up. They get new spells, they fight enemies, and then like we see new abilities being used along the way. And at the end, they fucking get the magic gem. Now Fumi like has leveled up his ability to make magic accessories and gems through his connection with this merchant. Fucking dope. So he gets the gem, he can make the magic thread, they get the fucking clothes. Boom, perfect capstone JRPG ending to this episode. It was like a perfect package, that particular arc that, again, people who are here for edginess did not get it this episode.
I'll tell you it's interesting to hear you talk about it with such enthusiasm.
I love this stuff in this.
It's totally show. You are a big time like grinding, min-maxing kind of guy.
Yeah.
You're more into that. Whereas I'm the type who skips all the cutscenes and runs into battle.
Sure.
And only puts my points into strength. So like,
right.
It for me, it's like, all right, I get it. They're leveling up. Like, I don't care. I just want to see the plot.
Maybe it's like, okay, like this is a story, right? This isn't a video game that I get to play and like toy around with like the mechanics. But what it does is it triggers my like inner gamer who played these games my entire youth, and it just makes me put into that place where I'm just thinking as if I was, and like I want to know what could his ultimate ability be? What's like his strongest shield? I want to know. I want to grind up, see the progression happen, and see him unlock all that stuff. Raftalia's got illusion magic. What could the highest level magic spell there be? What's Firo gonna look like at level 99 or whatever? That's exactly where my head goes, and I think a lot of people who came into this show just for edginess will absolutely get sick of this kind of shit. But it's like kind of, I'm going to say it leans more and more into that stuff as it goes on, as it gets a little bit less edgy as it goes. So like for me, I love both those things. So for me, it's like the perfect series. But for those who are just here for the edginess, for their hatred of women and whatnot, they probably will, lose interest in this stuff as it goes along.
I definitely think that this story is well tuned to the fact that it is going to be a long light novel series. And it's interesting because sometimes you read a story, especially manga is kind of bad about this, where a lot of manga feel like they had a good sense of what they were going to start off doing. And then once it like goes for more than a couple volumes, it suddenly feels like the author is having to now come up with shit.
I mean, because that's literally what happens. They don't plan for like what's going to happen a million years later. They just come up with the start and hope it lasts forever.
And a lot of these ones that, especially the ones that start as web novels, they seem to be way more planned around the idea that like, I'm going to write this. I'm going to make this a long ass thing, and like I have tons of ideas, because you can start by literally just creating like a tree, a skill tree. Like you could just literally draw out like a video game-esque skill tree and then say, okay, like by this volume I wanted to have these powers, by this volume I want this, and like you pace it like you're pacing a video game, and it just takes however long to write as it takes to write. But when I think of stories like Log Horizon or this one, less so That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, though that author said that in the first volume he didn't know what he was doing, but then at some point he figured out where he wanted the story to go. And like you can feel that shift happen. You feel this, that the early episodes just seem kind of like whatever, and then there's like a moment where it kind of clicks and it's like, this is what the show's about now. And even with that though, again, most of these they are completely cooked in video game logic, where it's all about this steady progression, about leveling up, putting points into different things, building a character, building a world, and like they just do it in that way. It's really interesting to see that adapted into storytelling form, because of the fact that like it has weaknesses in that you don't necessarily care as much about the player avatar and their progress as you would if you literally had to do that for you to progress. But because it's not a video game, there's a lot more room for pacing and narrative depth, and not having to think about what a player's gonna do.
That's very true. It's very true. Obviously, the emphases are going to be different because it's not actually a literal video game. So yeah, you got that going for you. I guess my only other comment about the episode was that Firo in her dress at the beginning of the ending was adorable, and I love her.
Very, very cute.
And on the subject of just Firo as a character, now that we're getting to know her, now that she's got a human form and whatnot, one of the cutest things about Firo, all filials are like this. I know I'm still saying it wrong. I don't give a shit. All of the birds share this one common trait, and that's that this species of birds fucking loves pulling carts. They are all about pulling carts. This is canon. This is a huge part of their character. And seeing like Firo, we just get a taste of it this episode, seeing her like excited to pull a cart. And actually, they get like anxiety and they start to freak out if they can't pull a cart for like a long enough period of time. This is real lore about Firo excellent. And all these birds. And seeing her, like, she's singing her little song about, like, I get to pull the cart for Master because he loves me, and it's so much fun. Super endearing. It's super endearing. It's one of my favorite things.
My favorite thing about her is the hyperviolence.
Isn't that? Yeah, like, she's such
always
a badass.
Always a fan.
It's pretty fucking sick. And other highlight of the episode was the voice acting of the, like the lolly manic dressmaker lady. I thought she did a great job. I thought she was killing it, and I thought like
surprisingly memorable character for having like one line, but like immediately you're just like, oh,
her voice actor was giving it her fucking all, and I was like, man, I wish the animation was like keeping up with this girl's voice acting because it is like way beyond what she was given here. So kudos to her. Anyway, I thought Firo was a great addition. I don't think this is a spoiler, but like I don't think the show's ever gonna get particularly edgy in the way it was at the start ever again. So I don't know. I haven't read it in a while. I don't remember. And edgy things do happen, but not the same kind of edginess. I don't know. There's going to be like lingering trauma. There's going to be other bad things.
I mean,
that happen,
I wouldn't want the whole show to just be about like this, like the exact issue it opens with. You know?
I mean, that's fair. I mean, this is
more of a tone setter than it is like the theme of the show.
It could shift into like, I mean, because it started so negative. We could go into like late game like Technolize world where like he gets like all his party members killed and like breaks all his limbs and he has to like, I don't know, use his fucking shields to walk or something. I don't know. Like it was really edgy. I guess I'm kind of saying that I don't even know if it gets particularly edgy or not myself, 'cause it's been so long, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm excited for more. Right. I loved this episode, kind of. It like visually, not great. Firo, kind of loved her. Animation, pretty shit, except for a couple of highlights. But that fucking RPG loop, that quest loop, just it sunk its teeth into me, and I was loving it. And maybe I'm in the minority there, but that's kind of one of the main things I like the show for.
We'll find out in the comments.
That's true. Let me know, people. I bet there's going to be a lot of people who are just like, Nate, what the fuck are you talking about? This sucked. This was shit.
I don't know. I feel like people watching this show have been pretty defensive about it and pretty into it.
I feel, but I'll be interested to see how many of them are like sleeper MGTOWs who like once the show stops hating on women like explicitly and exclusively, they're just like, I'm out. I got to go find like, I don't know. I'm going to go rewatch like, I don't know, some other show that also hates women, whatever else they got. Yeah. I guess we'll see.
Rape.
The animation.
That's a real show. Rape.
Is that true?
It's a hentai, yeah. There's a new one that just came out called like They Made Rape Legal with 3 exclamation points.
I've seen They Made Rape Legal, and gotta say, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, you looking for some new legislation? I think I've got some drafts to propose.
Stop.
Okay,
we get in trouble here. All right, that's it for this episode.
Bye.